Story 1. The Vanishing Hitchhiker. On a cold, foggy night, a young man named Mark was driving home from a late shift at work. His route took him through a winding, deserted road that cut through dense forest. As he rounded a bend, he saw a figure standing by the roadside, thumbing for a ride. It was a young woman, dressed in a white dress that seemed out of place for the chilly weather. Feeling a twinge of sympathy and concern, Mark pulled over and offered her a ride. She gratefully accepted, climbing into the passenger seat. Her skin was pale and she seemed shivering. He offered her his jacket, which she accepted with a faint smile. As they drove, she told him her name was Lily and that she needed to get home. She gave him an address not too far away, and they chatted lightly to pass the time. However, Mark couldn't help but notice how cold she felt, even with his jacket on. He glanced at her occasionally, but she seemed to avoid his gaze. They finally arrived at the address she provided. It was an old, decrepit house that looked like it hadn't been lived in for years. Mark felt uneasy but tried to remain polite. "We're here," he said. Lily turned to him and said, "Thank you for the ride." She handed him back his jacket and got out of the car. As she walked toward the house, she seemed to vanish into the fog. Confused and unnerved, Mark decided to investigate. He knocked on the door, but there was no answer. He noticed a light on in a nearby house and went over to ask about Lily. An elderly woman answered the door and listened to his story with a sad expression. "You've met Lily, haven't you?" she said softly. "She died many years ago, in a car accident on this very road. She always tries to get home, but she never can." Mark's blood ran cold. He rushed back to his car and drove home as fast as he could. When he got home, he found his jacket on the passenger seat, neatly folded, but it was ice cold to the touch. Story 2. The Shadow in the Mirror. Megan had just moved into a new apartment and was excited to start fresh. The place was cozy, and she spent the first few days happily arranging her belongings and getting everything just right. One evening, while unpacking a box in her bedroom, she found an old, ornate mirror. It was a beautiful antique piece, with an intricately carved frame that seemed to hold secrets of its own. She decided to hang it on the wall opposite her bed. That night, as she was getting ready to sleep, she noticed something strange in the mirror. A dark shadow seemed to be moving behind her reflection. She turned around quickly, but there was nothing there. Shaking off the unease, she went to bed. Over the next few nights, the shadow in the mirror became more pronounced. It moved closer to her reflection each night, becoming clearer. Megan tried to rationalize it, thinking it was just her imagination or a trick of the light. But the feeling of being watched grew stronger, and she started to dread looking into the mirror. One night, she decided to confront her fears. She stood in front of the mirror and watched as the shadow appeared once again. This time, it didn't just move closer, it reached out towards her reflection. Megan felt a chill run down her spine and backed away from the mirror, but the shadow's hand seemed to press against the glass, as if trying to break through. Terrified, she covered the mirror with a blanket and tried to sleep, but the feeling of dread persisted, and she found it impossible to rest. In the middle of the night, she was jolted awake by the sound of glass shattering. Heart pounding, she turned on the light and saw that the mirror had fallen off the wall and shattered on the floor. Amidst the broken pieces, she saw a small, dark figure standing. It was the shadow from the mirror, now free and real. It moved toward her, its form becoming more solid and menacing. Megan screamed and ran out of the apartment, not stopping until she reached a neighbor's door. She never returned to that apartment. The next day, she sent movers to collect her belongings. The mirror was gone, and the apartment seemed normal, but Megan knew better. She felt a lingering presence, a reminder that some shadows are better left unseen.